Oh my word, this is feeling like a beating. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I am glad that you are here. Today's nonsense is in Historic, and we're playing a deck that we played on stream a little bit ago here. It was a good stream. We streamed for like 5 hours or something on this deck alone, and we ended up going 26-13 with this deck, so a 67% win rate. Very, very strong showing from the deck. So I thought, what the heck? I want to share it with the YouTube audience. So what are we doing here? Well, at first glance, I'm sure you'll notice some cards like Death Baron. Zombies you control get 1/1 and Death Touch. Lord of the Accursed. Zombies get 1/1, and we can grant them Menace, right? And then some Diregraf Colossus stuff. So you're like, oh yeah, well, I mean, it's tribal zombies, right? Well, you're right. But you'll also note that it's missing a few cards. Well, where's the Crypt Breaker? Crypt Breaker is one of the best zombies on the client, things like that. Well, here's what we're doing, folks. We're actually playing around Puppet Raiser more than we're playing tribal zombies. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one target creature from your graveyard. If you do, seek a creature card with mana value equal to the mana value of that card, +1. That card perpetually gains Menace. So, in layman's terms, if we have Puppet Raiser out, at the end of our turn, we can exile a 1-drop from our graveyard, and it will give us a 2-drop randomly from our deck into our hand with Menace forever. Then, if we exile a 2-drop the next turn from our graveyard, it'll find us a 3-drop, and all the way up. So you'll notice, a lot of the time, zombie decks are going to try to be really low to the ground, really aggressive, which is a fine thing to do. But we're going all the way up to 5 mana here with Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Why? Why would we do that? Well, because Puppet Raiser, if we exile another Puppet Raiser from the graveyard, will allow us to go and find a Grey Merchant, and then hopefully drain our opponent out of the game. That's right. We're trying to, in essence, combo our opponent out a little bit by just climbing up the chain and doing those things. Like I say, the deck performed really well for the Twitch stream, so figured we'd share it with you. Let's get in some games, shall we? All right, folks, so here we are. Game 1 over here against Katie. Good luck, Katie. And this hand looks great. Yep, we're going to go ahead and start on a turn 1 swamp into Champion of the Perished. Our opponent going to play very rapidly. We appreciate that, Katie. Plains into Speaker of Heavens. Looks like we're going to be doing some life gaining. We go ahead and run out our Bojuka Bog because we're expecting our opponent will not be taking advantage of the graveyard, and we don't want to tap land later on. So we crash in with Champion of the Perished. Our opponent plays a Bishop of Wings. So we play our untapped land and a Diregraf Colossus because we filled the board, or filled the graveyard a little bit. Comes down as a 4/4. Don't really have good attacks that turn, but our opponent, again, very swiftly plays another Bishop of Wings. We're really worried about our opponent just gaining a ton of life. The good news is that we don't have very much power over there, so we just swing in again. Our opponent takes the easy block on Stitcher Supplier, which does fill our bin some more. But they take 9 damage, folks. They're untapping on turn 4, and they're only at 9 life in the life gain deck. This is good news indeed. So our opponent, we're really worried about Collected Company here. Sure enough, though, they run out the Soul Warden into Voice the Blessed, which would normally be a really good play here. But, you know, we've just got kind of a good board, so we're just going to jam. They don't really have a lot of good blocks. Okay, they can eat the 2/2. It's true. But by jamming with the 2/2, it is definitely, it forces them to block in ways they might not normally. So the Voice of the Blast grows to a 4/4. They cast on their Soul Warden, which is great, so they're up to a 5/5, and suddenly our attacks don't look too good. But wait, we were hoping for a land, but the Sap Vitality is actually great. It gives us attacks now. Yes, okay, the Voice of the Blast can trade with the Champion of the Perished, but the most likely scenario is they're just going to eat the Diregraf Colossus. Indeed, they go for the bait. Sap Vitality. And we crash in. Our opponent drops to 3. Now, we're down to 1 creature. Not ideal, but boom! Diregraf Colossus comes down and hits the board with a thump. It's a 9/9 because of all those creatures been going to the graveyard. So, Champion of the Perished, individual lethal, needs to be blocked. Our opponent comes up with another Voice of the Blessed. So we're going to go ahead and just jam. Both of these are lethal. They need to block both of these creatures. Do they get rid of one of their combo pieces? Do they get rid of the payoff? Yeah, I kind of agree with our opponent. Soul Warden, the single most important card in their deck, presuming they're trying to combo off. But what do you do now? We have an 8/8, a 9/9, you know, and some additional creatures. They're up the creek without a paddle. Indeed, they agree. Katie, scooping them up. GG, Katie. Bloodghast, our next opponent. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and start on a swamp and a Champion's Parish because this hand looks great. We're really kind of chagrined that we don't have a 2-drop. Really wish we had a 2-drop here. But alas, you can't always get what you want. Bloodghast shocks, and for Inquisition of Kozilek, no! Please, we wanted those cards. Alright, well, we do at least draw a 1-drop off the top, which is better than casting nothing, so Champion of the Parish grows up to a 2/2, crash in for 2 points of damage. Opponent casts a Magmatic Channeler. Well, 2 can play at that game. We are going to go ahead and cast a Death Baron to grow our Champion of the Parish, to give our Stitcher Supplier Death Touch, and make our opponent drop all the way down to 10 life. That is not very many life points. Oh no, the opponent gets a Bloodchief's Thirst off of a Magmatic Channeler activation. They cast it and hit our Champion of the Parish. Suddenly our attacks aren't great anymore. The problem is, for our opponent, our attacks don't need to be very good. So we slam a Diregraf Colossus, that's a 5/5, and exile their graveyard. That makes their Magmatic Channeler much farther from becoming a 4/4. Really hoping they don't have a removal spell here. Since they have the Fabled Passage, they could have Fatal Pushes, things like that. They could have, you know, more Bloodchief's Thirst. They've already shown us Bloodchief's Thirst. But keeping the Diregraf Colossus is almost certainly a good game. Our opponent, unfortunately, does have the Bedevil. Okay. Hey! Off the top of our library, though, here comes Sap Vitality to punish our opponent just a wee bit. Opponent going to activate in response. Does indeed. Discards a mountain. Reveals Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek, both of them being sorceries. You can't use them. We crash in for 4 damage, dropping our opponent down to 2. Do you have a miracle? We will see. Well, I mean, sort of. Kolaghan's Command does cleanse our Death Baron and make us discard. The problem for our opponent is we attack for 1 and cast a 1/1. And now our opponent is dead on board. GG. Bloodghast. GG. All right, folks. Now we are up against Mr. Christmas. And this is a pretty good match. We're going to go ahead and cast a Champion of the Parish. Unfortunately, our opponent, being on the play, has the initiative and is able to Flame Blast Bolt it. But then they follow up with Rahilda, which is terrible, because we don't have a 2-drop, so the Rahilda just immediately flips. One of those times when being on the play versus on the draw is just huge, because if we'd been on the play, Rahilda doesn't flip. It would be our turn 3 after Rahilda comes down, and then we just cast Death Baron, right? So now we've got to hold up the Sap Vitality, because we don't want the Rahilda to run us over. And they crash in with our own Undead Augur. Ugh, feels bad. It's also of note, folks, that Dreadhorde Arcanist they cast happens to be a zombie. You don't ever see Dreadhorde Arcanist in zombie decks because it doesn't really fit. But Dreadhorde Arcanist with Undead Augur feels pretty bad, man. All right, well, enough crying about that. We get to cast a Death Baron and follow it up with a Stitcher Supplier. The unfortunate thing is, our opponent follows that up with a Kroxa. So as far as us getting ahead, we just keep falling farther behind. It feels like our opponent's still at 20. We're at 8. They have a better board presence. We cast the Puppet Razor, but it's just a 3/4. We have no creatures in the bin. They've been exiling them with Flame Blast Bolt after Flame Blast Bolt. With the Soul Guide Lanterns over there, they do not want to bother with creatures going to the graveyard. They want to exile everything. Sure enough, here comes another Soul Guide Lantern. My lord. We have an interesting decision here. We could have waited for the Undead Augur, but we elect to go for a wee bit of draining, because being at 8, there was a whole bunch of different ways that this game could potentially end. And if we go for the Undead Augur to get a little greedy, and our opponent just hits us with Thoughtseize or something, then we lose our Grey Merchant, and it would be a 5/4 on the board and everything. You know, it seems like the better play. So we do that. Our opponent comes up with another Kolaghan's Command, hits our Puppet Razor, crashes in. The Flame Blast Bolt going to exile it, and now we're presented with either Magmatic Channeler or Dreadhorde Arcanist. We decide to kill the Yeah, the Magmatic Channeler, I'm sorry. And not sure if that was correct or not, but we do get Sap Vitality off the top. Feels good, man. And then we get to crash in for 5. Our opponent, of course, not just going to chump block there. We finally get the Undead Augur down. But remember, folks, they returned the Rahilda back to hand with the Kolaghan's Command. So Rahilda, being a first striking threat, is another big, dangerous, nasty creature that we've got to worry about. And yes, we do have a 5-2, but the 2 toughness really matters against first strike, right? Opponent going to take their time here on their decision-making process. Elects to go with Seasoned Pyromancer. Don't blame them there. Very, very good thing to do. They're going to discard a couple of cards. It's a Fatal Push and a Kolaghan's Command. Man, are they running over us or what? They're discarding all of those really, really powerful cards there. So we draw Liliana for the turn. We elect to charge in. Our opponent trades off all 4 bodies for the Grey Merchant. We draw a card and lose a life. We were really hoping for maybe a 1-drop. Didn't get it. We got a 2-drop, though. So we've got to kill this Rahilda because the first strike, again, is abusing us. Opponent, looking at that bin, looks like it's going to be Kroxa coming back. Going to make us discard the Mire Triton. Feels bad. All right. Sure enough. Does do it. And now there's a 6-power creature on board. Feels bad, man. No, the land for the turn. Just absolutely brutal here. We've got to go up with Liliana. Mill over a few cards, which is good. Drains our opponent down to 7. And our opponent, though, with 3 cards in hand, really feels like they're on the offensive here. We feel like we've got to double block the Kroxa. I'm not certain this was the correct decision. Maybe it was just better to chump block and keep our Undead Augur alive. But we draw 2 cards, and we figure, what the heck, we'll have something to do, right? No, our opponent thought seizes away our action. So we're left with a land, and then we draw another land, and we can do nothing. Make that stone. Nothing, except for watch ourselves die, as City Stalker Connoisseur comes down, makes us discard our final swamp. They kill off our Liliana, we drop to 7, and what was looking fine for several turns is now looking absolutely tragic and well out of hand, and it's looking like we are going to die. Sure enough, Stitch Supplier off the top, not going to be the miracle we needed, and our opponent going to bring back Kroxa from the bin. We take 3 from the Kroxa trigger, and they can crash in, and no matter how we block, we die. So GG, Mr. Christmas, GG. It is unfortunate, but alas, you win some, you lose some. So from here, folks, we have done... I ended up trimming out another game. It was a win, but it was against the same deck again. We saw the black-red deck, the black-red deck, and then there was another black-red deck right after. So I was like, all right. But it wasn't a very entertaining win. Our opponent got stuck on land, so no big deal. Okay, so Diregraf Colossus comes down. It's true, yeah, we skipped the first part of this because Jules Spock took the maximum amount of time on the mulligan decision and then played a land for the turn and then took the maximum amount of time. So we're just like, cut out all that fat. It was just 3 minutes solid of doing nothing. So on our turn 3, we cast Diregraf Colossus. Our opponent chooses to take 2 when we crash in on turn 4. We followed up with Champion of the Perished. And then we're trying to decide, do we commit the Death Baron? Finally, after a little bit of deliberation, we elect not to because we're worried our opponent's foretold a card. It could be Doomscar, but they could also have Day of Judgment. It's coming up in turn 4. It turns out it was Divine Purge. All right, fine. So we're very leery of counter spells, but we've also got to be very leery of the fact that that could still be Doomscar, so we don't want to overcommit, but we definitely need to spend our mana. So we go with Champion of the Perished and a tap land, because it was the only land we had. We would have gone with Diregraf Colossus first if it hadn't been a tap land, so a little bit of unfortunate stuff there. Our mana value is not really working out great. You know, we have a Puppet Raiser for 4 mana, we have the Lord of the Accursed, and, you know, the Death Baron, so we'd like to cast both of them in the same turn if we can. So we elect to go with the 5-drop to just be the most mana efficient, crash in for 1 damage. Our opponent opts, probably looking for a land drop. They go with Soul Guide Lantern on the scry, and then cash it in. I think that was pretty greedy. I think they really should have bottomed that and saved their mana, but alas, they end up missing a land drop. Good news for us for sure. Champion of the Perished crashes in for 3 because we cast Lord of the Accursed and miss another land drop. Feels bad, man. But considering both the opponent and I are on the whole missing lands train, that's okay. Opponent goes with Wandering Emperor main, and this is a questionable decision. I understand they were probably thinking we want to do it while it's exiled. Or, I mean, while it's tapped. But I don't see why they wouldn't do that on our turn, you know. So we just are able to spend our mana very, very efficiently. We go with an Undead Augur and a Death Baron, and now we are presenting just an awful lot of damage. The opponent casts a Teferi, and they're going to be able to untap a lot of mana. But, you know, just not that big of a deal. So I guess we're just going to crash in and say, you can have your Teferi. Can you kill us? You know? The opponent floats a little mana. Goes with Fateful Absence. Okay. We draw a card, lose a life. Opponent's looking at our stuff, thinking about the stuff, and decides we don't have a board sweeper, let's draw cards, and oh boy, we couldn't be happier. We even draw into the Bojuka Bog, which is great for us. We have Bone Shards available, so we take a quick look at their graveyard, making sure there isn't anything they can flash back or anything, and just Bone Shards, discarding the Bojuka Bog, play a Puppet Razor that has grown because of the Sap Vitalities, and then we get a Diregraf Colossus because it exiles a 2-drop from the bin. Our opponent does get a Lotus Field down, and they stifle the trigger. But that's just not good enough. So the opponent commits our creature, but we activate Hive the Eye Tyrant. Good game? Yeah, so our opponent made a couple of questionable decisions there. I really don't know what they were doing there, but it's also possible they were kind of distracted, and that's why it took so long for them to get started in the beginning. Okay, that said, it was a good game, and I appreciate that, Jules Spock. Next on the docket is Lost 10. Good luck, Lost 10. Yeah, this hand, a little bit awkward for us, so we do end up sending it back. Have a little bit of a difficult time. We elect to keep all of our stuff, just forego the interaction, go with Stitcher Supplier to fill the bin. Hey, a couple of creatures make it into there. Oh boy. And the opponent has Knight of the Ebon Legion. We consider blocking just to fill the graveyard, elect not to, but decide we do want to fill the bin even more because Diregraf Colossus is going to be able to come down soon and really hit the battlefield with a thump. Under those circumstances, the opponent just equips the Shadow Spear, crashes in for 2. We do elect to block this time, fill the bin a wee bit more. Briefly consider doing Champion of the Perished Undead Augur, but no. No, we were setting up for this. Diregraf Colossus comes down as a 7/7, folks. So now it's time to get on the board in earnest. We cast a creature, make a zombie, cast a creature, make a zombie. The Champion of the Parish growing all the while, and we get to smash in with a 7/7. Good lord. Lost 10. Feeling the heat on that one. Up until this turn, they weren't that far behind, but getting hit with that 7/7 just puts them dramatically far behind. Now they have to react by Murderous Ridering, and then boom, we just cast Death Baron. GG. They missed a single land drop, but folks, when you're able to punish as well as this deck can punish, you know, you'll regret missing even just one. One of the advantages of this deck. So GG opponent, GG. All right, folks, we are now up against B double. Good luck, B double. And this hand looks fine. We're going to Stitch a Supplier past the turn. Going to plan on holding up Sap Vitality. Oh, crud. Do we bolt the birds? Well, no, I think we're going to not, and try and get whatever they cast with it. Oh, no, it's Elvish Visionary. Interesting. Now we are really tempted to bolt the birds, but we figure what the heck. We'll let them attack with it just in case they have some kind of protection spell here. So we grow our Puppet Razor with the Sap Vitality, cast a Death Baron to crash in for 2. Opponent drops to 15 and takes a card for the turn. Shocks in Breeding Pool, casts Charming Prince. Interesting, going to exile and return an Elvish Visionary to draw the card up to 13. Well, shoot, folks. We just have another Death Baron. How about we have a bunch of 3/3s, right? So we play our land for the turn, pass back to our opponent. They go with Yasharn, Implacable Earth, a card that is near and dear to my heart. I love that card. But in this case, you're so far behind. They're at 7 life, folks. They're at 7 life. So you know what we're going to do? Jam another Death Baron. That's what we're going to do. And yeah, okay, they can trade with the one Death Baron. But they've got to chump the other one because they're dead if they don't. So now they're at 3 life, and we have a board full of 3/3s. They go with Nissu Shakes the World. And I have to feel like if this game had gone on even 1 turn longer, we probably might not have made it. But it didn't. They do as much blocking as they can. They fall to exactly 0, and the game ends on the spot. So GG, opponent. GG. Yeah, definitely a little scared of what could have happened, but alas, that's why you play aggressive decks. Our next opponent is Skoja Aldrig Poppy. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, but we're going to just go with a Stitch Supplier, mill over 3 cards. I am very eagerly anticipating being able to cast an Undead Augur. It hits the battlefield with a thump. Our opponent foretells, and we crash in for 3. Oh no, folks, we're missing a land drop. Our opponent goes with Ichor Wellspring. I have no idea what's going on there, but we crash in. We are able to cast another Undead Augur, but we're missing another land drop. No. Oh, no. Meat Hook Massacre comes down, kills all of our creatures. Admittedly, we do get to, you know, draw 6 cards, so it's definitely not the end of the world, but we're also not overly happy about it. Mill over a few cards, cast Champion of the Perished, Stitch Supplier, have to discard a Puppet Razor and a land, and somehow we are back to being stuck on mana again. Admittedly, discarding the land was probably greedy, but I figured we have a fistful of 3 drops. If we miss another land or 2, it shouldn't matter that much. I would rather not get behind the control deck, because they're obviously doing controlling things. However, it is sad because we Diregraf Colossus thinking we have a 10/10, and they Rite of Oblivion because they're soulless and corrupt. We do make a land drop, thank heavens, and I'm thinking, well, we have a whole fistful of options, but what the heck? We have a 10/10, so we'll put it into play. Our opponent, though, has a Rite of Oblivion. Or, I'm sorry, a Doomscar. And the Outlaw's Merriment automatically made me go from infinitely salty and outwardly upset to giving Skoja all of the forgiveness they could possibly ask for, because Outlaw's Merriment, a pet card of mine and one of my favorites, the opponent making free tokens, doing, you know, living the dream over there, and then they cast Kaya Orzhov Usurper against our graveyard deck, and it feels like things are slipping away. We go up with Liliana, mill ourselves a little more, drain our opponent just a little bit. But the unfortunate thing is the opponent has Kaya Orzhov Usurper, so they tick down. Exile our 1-drop, have another Kaya Orzhov Usurper, goes up, exiles more of our bin. Trial of Ambition, and we have to sacrifice our only creature, and oh my word, this is feeling like a beating. We miss another land drop. My greed is coming back to punish me. So we figure, okay, let's start this over. Let's try and get a 2-drop. Start to get some more card advantage going. We Puppet Razor, exile a 1-drop to get an Undead Augur. And then we figure, okay, let's try this again. The opponent, Rite of Oblivions, our Puppet Razor. Fine. And Kaya Orzhov Usurper exiles a couple of creatures. Then they kill our Planeswalker. We get a land drop, finally, thank heavens. And we go Undead Augur and Mire Triton. The problem is they're now 5 creatures wide with a Planeswalker on board. And they Croaks us. Folks, We are getting brutalized. This is not hardly a game. As a matter of fact, I feel like I should remove the family-friendly tag for this game because what is happening over here is just not family-friendly at all. We take our free block, take our beats, we drop to 11, praying that something happens. Death Baron's a good card. Okay, so Bojuka Bog exiles the bin. The problem is it's a bit late. As long as, yeah, our opponent doesn't grievously screw up, they win next turn. So I just scoop it up. I don't want to do this anymore. Our opponent has sapped my will to live successfully. So major props to our opponent for doing just that. We will go ahead and move on to the next game because my soul aches, my heart hurts, and my pants are also, well, you know. All right. We are going to, our opponent starts with a Soul Guide Lantern, and you gotta know, I'm a little salty at this point. We have played a lot of games and just been facing off against Soul Guide Lantern after Soul Guide Lantern after Soul Guide Lantern. And why? Because it's the stinking black-red deck again. You know, I had talked about how we already edited out one of these black-red games, and for some reason we just keep facing off against this deck. I almost didn't show this game either, but I thought, oh well, at least there were some interesting things happening. And I wanted to show you all why I was salty about the Soul Guide Lantern. So, here it goes. Exiling our graveyard, and the Diregraf Colossus makes it to the battlefield. It is still a 2-2 that makes additional 2-2s, so it's not the end of the world. The problem is our opponent does have the Dreadhorde Arcanist, so they Painful Bond. Ogre had Helm. Hold on, there have been just a little bit of modifications made to this list, let me tell you. So we crash in with the death-touching 3/3s, drop our opponent to 14. Bojuka Bog, exile that stinking Croxa. Get that thing out of here. We are sick of having it abuse us. The opponent has a Dreadhorde Arcanist, equips the Helm onto it, and we're trying to decide how to go about this. We just decide, you know what? Let's just jam. Yes, we give up the Diregraf Colossus, but our opponent's at 6 now. It's true we could have had another 2-2, which is a 3/3 death touch, if we had done this pre-combat, but I wanted to, yeah, see if our opponent would commit to the Ogre Head Helm play and just basically time walk our opponent with the Sap Vitality. So our opponent does kill our zombie, which draws us more cards, which gives us the ability to essentially just win the game very easily in a number of different ways. We elect to go with the Hive, the Eye Tyrant, just in case they do have some very disrupting magic cards that I couldn't think of, and we exile one of the cards from their bin, just to be certain. GG, opponent. GG. Aaron. Yes, good luck, Aaron. Good luck. They start on a Hallowed Fountain tapped. We start with a Swamperino, and we are prepared for another one. I get impatient of waiting and start fooling around with the pet. Our opponent goes with Stitcher Supplier. Oh, no. Is this Reanimate? This looks like Reanimate. So we go with Undead Augur instead then. We could have Mire Tritoned, but we figured there, you know, the Mire Triton does not, it trades with Stitcher Supplier. That isn't a good deal for us. So our opponent goes with Bone Shards, sacrifices their Stitcher Supplier to kill our Undead Augur. We draw a card, lose a life for the trouble. It's an Agadeem's Awakening. We go with the Swamp. Death Baron, go. The opponent has the Faithful Mending. Inconvenient. There goes an Unburial Rites into the bin, bringing back the Sarah Emissary. Protection from creatures. So naturally, we Bone Shards, discarding a Swamp. Play Mire Triton to fill the bin. It's a 3/2. Crash in for 2. The problem is they're still at 18. You know? Bizarre Trade Mage comes down, draws 2, discards 3. And there's another Unburial Rites in the bin. Fine. We're going to crash in with the Mire Triton. The opponent could easily trade here. Do they elect to do so? Feels foolish. But they agree, unfortunately. So now we're presented with, you know, Puppet Razor or Mire Triton. We elect to go with Puppet Razor to fill our hand. The problem is, we've already spent our easiest removal spell. Our opponent goes for Massacre Worm, which is a huge relief. But the problem is, the Sarah's Emissary is still hanging out. So we fill the bin as best we can. We elect to exile a 2-drop, or I mean a 1-drop, trying to get a 2-drop. It's going to be an Undead Augur. Our opponent at 17 is looking quite healthy. Oh my goodness, here comes another Unburial Rites. You gotta be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. That's the third one. Mildly frustrated. Marginally tilted. None of our Bojuka Bogs have shown up yet. But, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, and, you know, when in video game, do as the players do, or something. We crash in for a 4/4 because it's Vigilant. Our opponent on 13, Puppet Razor, going to exile a 2-drop to get a 3-drop. Death Baron is essentially lethal. But the third Unburial Rites. We beat 2. They lose if they didn't have the third. That there's protection from creatures. Our opponent elects to forego the attack step because they know if we have an instant or sorcery that could kill the Sarah's Emissary, they can just lose. But we scoop it up because all they have to do is press the attack button, and they have protection from creatures, so we cannot block. No! Okay. Vithrilus. Good luck, Vithrilus. Well, we take a mulligan. Feels really bad. Take another mulligan. Feels really bad. Go with Champion of the Perished. Go. Our opponent starts filling their bin, and we're like, you gotta be kidding me here. Really? All right. So we grow our Champion of the Perished up to a 2/2. Our opponent shocks in a breeding pool, or I'm sorry, a Hallowed Fountain, which brings them to 14. So we're going to crash in for 4. Opponent blocks 2 of it. Goes to 12. Presumably going to... does not. We were expecting a Faithful Mending. Gain a couple of life back. They don't do it. So, okay, land, Lord of the Accursed, going to grow the Champion of the Parish, but also grow the others. Suddenly, boom, boom, our opponent's at 5. Faithful Mending up to 7. But they've got to do something. Shocks in down to 5. Lay to dinner. Protection from creatures. No. So, okay, we play a land past the turn. A single Sap Vitality is good. But the 7th Toughness is very inconvenient for Sap Vitality. So another Sap Vitality off the top isn't going to do it. We probably should have killed the Priest of Felrites there. But it doesn't actually matter because they had the food. I was really excited about Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Oh, we got him! Oh yeah, that's right. They cast Late to Dinner. That wasn't Unburial Rites. So we're dead. Right? I mean, not strictly, but it feels that way. Another Grey Merchant off the top would do the job. But we're certainly not holding our breath here. Opponent digging through their bin with Priest of Felrites, going to go after Elishnorn. Does. They grow to or they have a 9/9, and sure enough, our final opportunity to win is thwarted by the top of our deck. So close. And yet so far. GG, Vithrilus. GG. Folks, that one was very, very close. I can't help but wonder if maybe I had sequenced things a little bit different in the early turns or something. Maybe, just maybe we could have brought home the bacon. But alas, didn't happen. Floga, 1984 is our next opponent. They start on a Swamp and Thoughtseize. Always feels a little bad when it's turn 1 Thoughtseize, you know? But alas, that's why the cards are there. They are looking at our hand. And they take the Puppet Razor. So we go Stitcher Supplier, fill the bin a wee bit. And play another Swamp. And a Soul Guide Lantern. Come on, man! Alright. These only show up when we're playing graveyard decks. And then when, you know, we're not, our opponent's never wasting card slots on them. You know, at least that's where it feels. Oh well. It happens. Mire Triton. Gains 2, fills the bin a little bit. Inquisition of Kozilek gets our Lord of the Accursed. Darn it, leave our hand alone. We don't need no education. Well, Mire Triton comes on down, gains a little more life. Fills our bin just a little more. Our opponent on 14 suddenly is not looking overly healthy. It's true, maybe we were supposed to sequence a little differently there. I had thought about, or I was wanting to hold on to the Bojuka Bog just in case they wanted to fill their bin even more. But then nothing ever came of it, so we just run it out. Our opponent Crux of Fates, destroying our team. We briefly debate the Diregraf Colossus, electing, no, let's just get the Planeswalker on the board, start ticking up its loyalty. Then we'd be able to cast a whole bunch of things from the bin. Oh, wait. No. The opponent has Eldest Reborn. I did not see that one coming. But okay. No big deal. Diregraf Colossus hits the board with a thump. It's a 9/9 and individually lethal. We have to discard one of our 2 Grey Merchant of Asphodels. And the opponent surely doesn't have a removal, do they? No, they do. Okay, well, we get a land. It's unfortunately a tapped land. Darn it. Okay, not that many in the deck, but there was one here. Eldest Reborn. Going to go and pull a creature from somewhere. Probably going to be our graveyard, considering their graveyard is empty. What do they choose? Our Liliana, pretty useless for them because it only really does stuff if you've already got zombies in your deck. So they elect to go with Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Drains us for 2. Okay. And our turn. Well, shoot. Trying to decide what to do. We end up going for Hive of the Eye Tyrant because it's unblockable. We crash in and get to exile the Saga. We're hoping they don't come up with instant speed removal. They pay the life. Down to 8. They Soul Guide Lantern to draw the card and just take the damage anyway. At 5 life, they Professor Onyx. Oh no! They lose a life down to 4. Look at the top 3. You can put one in your hand, the rest in the graveyard. They do that. Waste not. And they crash in with Grey Merchant. Well, folks, we pull Champion of the Perished off the top, and our own Grey Merchant comes out of the hand. Our opponent down to 1 cannot go up with Professor Onyx, lest they die. But they can go down. And then they also Eldest Reborn. But then, folks, they don't have the instant speed interaction. They go with Davriel Rogue Shadow Mage, and darn it, we've got Hive the Eye Tyrant. Hey, it worked out after all. Boy, oh boy, I can't tell you how worried I was. But GG. Flogon 1984. GG. All right, folks, we are back. We are back. And, man, that was a blast. We had a great time. How did the deck do? Honestly, it did great. As far as how many hats would I give it? I would give it a solid 3 hats out of 4. And I don't know. I mean, maybe even a solid, or up to the 4th hat, you know? But, you know, it's difficult to say. We won at a, we won at a 67% clip, right? So you can't really complain when your deck does 67%, but it did still feel like there was a little bit of optimization that could be done, particularly in the removal suite, should that situation present itself. So, things I might change. Well, we might fool around with the Bone Shards and Sap Vitality, perhaps. Maybe we elect to go instead. This is really nice in aggro shells because we don't need to be removing 6/6s very often. And this grows our other creatures, right? So if we're in mono black and we're being aggressive, this is very, very good removal. But it's possible maybe we do want just hard removal somewhere. I think tentatively this is fine, but I'm not sure about Bone Shards. We don't have enough of a sacrifice shell and stuff to really make it worth it. So unless we're specifically sacrificing Stitch Supplier, it's iffy. But it should be played with a little bit, I think. And it's also possible we want to cut 1 or 2 other cards just to make sure we have that. The other thing is our land. We're on 22 land, 2 Agadeem's Awakening. And I'm tentatively saying that's okay, but it's possible maybe we want to go all the way down to like 20 and have 4 Agadeem's Awakening, or, you know, some facsimile there. And last but certainly not least is the notable exemptions. Zombies can get a lot more aggressive. So if you're looking to do maybe a more aggressive thing and just be like, yeah, but what if I just made my opponent dead? There are some really, really good cards for that. Notably, I think the best card, the highest quality card that we just excluded was Crypt Breaker. Being able to tap 3 untapped zombies you control, draw a card is insane. It also can make zombies just over the course of time, and it's a 1-mana 1/1. So when you have Death Baron down, it becomes a 2-mana death or 2/2 Death Touch. Like, it's just fine to do, right? Another one is the Changeling Outcast. Can't block, but can't be blocked. So if we have any number of our zombies down, or our lords down, this gets big enough to really be threatening all on its own, and can really mess the opponent up if we're trying to be a lot more aggressive. I would only do this card if you're thinking, yeah, let's do away with the Grey Merchant plan, do away with Liliana, maybe even go down to like 1 or, you know, or 2 or 3 Puppet Razor or something, and go more aggressive. And the last one is the Shambling Ghast. This one would open up the door for you to maybe be a little taller, go a little bigger, maybe go all the way up to the 4 Grey Merchants or something. Being able to have this die and create a treasure would be very, very advantageous. But currently, the Champion of the Parish is one I would never consider cutting under any circumstances. Never cut this card. Undead Augur, you want all 4. Under no circumstances should you cut this card. And, you know, for this deck, again. Other versions of zombies or whatever. And then the only other one that I would say is a must leave is actually, for this deck, the Diregraf Colossus. We're filling our graveyard enough. This comes down very, very large and makes a lot of zombies. The Death Baron, you better have a darn good reason for cutting it, but I could even see going down to 2 or 3 of those for what this deck does. But on the whole, I feel like this is all a little bit nitpicky because the deck won at a 67% win rate, right? You know, how much more can you complain? But I would just love to see what you folks do with it down in the comments below. If things go well, let me know. In the meantime, I'm a Twitch streamer, John Likes Games, or twitch.tv/John Likes Games, and I'd love if you would drop a follow. I'd also, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button, folks. I don't ask for this sort of stuff very often, but it really, really helps the channel when you do. And just making it up to like that 1,000 subscriber threshold is a huge, huge milestone for the channel, and it makes YouTube recommend my videos more often and all that kind of stuff. It really, really helps. So a big thank you to anyone who watched this far, and I will catch you all next time.